Hi, everybody. Welcome to what is hopefully going to be a great series that we've decided to post to all of our social media and our website at Barbicide, just to help everybody get through all of the questions that I really don't like answering, or I can't answer, or somebody else has a better answer. So the first in our series is talking about makeup. And actually, if you've ever heard me speak, you know that I hate talking about makeup. I'm not very good at applying it myself. And I don't always have the greatest answers for how to go about making it safer for yourself and for your clients. So today we have Kristen Cade with us. Kristen is a licensed cosmetologist who does hair and makeup in the Chicago area. And she reached out to us a couple of weeks ago and asked a question about using our products in her video, in a video that she was planning to make. And I will be honest, I thought for a fact that she was going to send me a video that I was going to be like, oh, this is horrible. And you know what? She sent us the greatest video. She has the greatest demeanor and the greatest personality. So I really am excited that we can bring her to you and answer some of your questions. So before I let her introduce herself, I do want to also tell you that the video she made will be on our website, www.barbicide.com, by the end of the day today. Today is Tuesday, May 28th, I think, something like that, the day after Memorial Day, for a fact. And that we have prefaced this interview with asking you guys to ask your own questions. So those are the questions we're going to use in this interview. If we get tons of other questions in, we may invite her back and let her speak to us again a little bit about what she does. So Kristen, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, so I am a licensed cosmetologist. I've been doing hair and makeup for, I think, around 6 years or so. And I'm just very grateful for you guys for being able to work with me on developing this, because it's been something I've been really frustrated about, that there's just so much like false information in our industry. So upon seeing that, I do have a lot of friends in the medical industry, and I try to get some to go live with me on Instagram to, like, while I go through my kit, which they were too scared to do. So I, again, out of frustration, reached out to you, and you were so helpful. So yeah, I'm just excited to be able to share and provide all of this information for you. And I hope this clears up a lot of things that, the confusion that we have.
Okay, great. So what I want to do is take some of the most common questions. We literally got close to 75 questions just from a post on Friday. So over the weekend, we got about 75 questions. What I've done is come up with the most frequently asked ones. Some of them are answered in your video. In fact, quite a few of them are actually answered in your video. But because they keep being asked over and over again, I think that they're very important. So I want to ask you to give us, a little brief discussion on them here. So when it comes to personal protective equipment, we hear all the time about the requirements in different states. And I know it varies widely. But when we talk about gloves and masks in particular, what is your advice on that in the makeup world today?
Yeah, I think we should always follow the advice of our state, and if they are requiring us to wear things while we're working, we have to follow those guidelines. But masks will definitely be our greatest tool for protecting, like, ourselves and our clients if we're both wearing a mask. Obviously, that might not be possible in every single situation. I know a lot of people have talked about maybe when the client wears a mask at first, like some states, you have to absolutely wear the mask. So maybe just doing the eye makeup and being 6 feet apart and talking to them about how to put on the lipstick, and maybe you will put the lipstick in a container for them, put it somewhere they can grab it and do that. And then you should definitely change your mask, or be really careful when you're taking it off, when you're going to, like, laundry and things like that, so that you're not touching the germs on the outside and then putting it back on again. But otherwise, that should be okay to keep wearing. And then for gloves and things, I think the more things that you end up touching, you probably have a higher likelihood of cross-contamination.
Mm-hmm.
You're being really careful and mindful of that stuff. I think it's a great tool, especially if you are still going to wear artificial nails, or for some sentimental reason you won't take your jewelry off, things like that. But otherwise, I think the PPE that people are talking about, these surgical gowns and things, I think if you are not taking it off carefully, you're just kind of blowing could be blowing that stuff around more. So that's just something to think about how you actually work and what is required of you.
It sounds like when you're doing makeup, like it's kind of a crazy pace. Like there's, for a lot of you that, if it's a bridal party, if it's a set where people are doing production, that people are coming and going and coming and going, and that with personal protective equipment, it gets really, really hot and uncomfortable to wear at times. So figuring out what works for you might take a little bit of time, right? Yeah, what you can work in. So one of the questions that we've gotten a couple of times is if I am a client and I want to bring my own makeup, let's say my own mascara, my own lipstick, let's say perhaps I feel like I'm in an at-risk population and I want to bring it and ask you to use it. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think that could definitely be safer, especially like you said, if you are in a high-risk population. I think the things to be mindful of is if you have insurance, which hopefully you do for yourself and your business, to be prepared and speak to them about how to go about that, and should you maybe get a liability waiver, and see what's required that way. And if you do use your own makeup, just be mindful of what you're actually using. So if you're using theirs and they might not take the same caution when like cleaning your own stuff, I don't want to be going right away to my kit and touching everything in there because I can contaminate it that way. So kind of like if you can stick to maybe using one or the other, or just being really mindful and prepared ahead of time.
Great idea. Not mixing them, but using all of their makeup or none of their makeup. Is that what you're saying? Right. Okay, good. I've had a couple of questions about disposable tools. So I'm thinking things like sponges and that type of thing. How can you make them last longer is the question we're getting. Now, I know they're single use, so they have to go in the trash, but I think what they're getting at is things like cutting tools, that kind of thing, like make one sponge into two. Is that something you would recommend?
I could see that being possible, especially with the sponges. If you're doing that in a clean area to begin with, and your scissors or whatever you're using are really clean, I think that could be okay. But as far as like other tools, like double dipping, reusing it in other things, that's definitely not okay. And they do make really good disposable applicators, so I know a lot of people have problems just using them in general. I think if you're using a good quality one, it might be more expensive up front, but you're going to have to use less of them because you're not quality, it just gets the job done right away. You're not having to like go back in and redo it a bunch of times.
So a couple other questions then about disposable applicators. One was the use of mascara wands. I know in your video you talk about using a separate mascara wand for each eye. Is there a reason that you asked them to do that?
So you don't want to spread something that could be in the left eye to the right eye.
Right.
Make sure it's contained, and a lot of the things we probably could see and we would avoid those things anyways, or we'd say we can't do the makeup there. But sometimes if it's early or if it's later and it's healing and they maybe don't tell us about it, we can't see those things. So we just need to be protecting ourselves and them by not spreading something from one eye to the next where it's such a contagious area.
Very good. I totally agree with that. And then one of the other questions we got is that in some of the states, for state boards, they don't allow them to bring in anything other than disposable tools. So everything that they use, all of the items that they use have to be disposable. And one of the big questions we got was, are there any tips for making it look better, right? I mean, they maybe don't. And I think that would be not just for your state boards now, but for your practice in general. Are there tips? You said buying a better quality disposable, but are there any other tips that you can think of that make them work better?
I think, yeah, definitely buying better quality will make a difference. And also think about like your favorite brushes, how they work. Mm-hmm. Try to figure out what disposables work kind of similar in the same way. I wouldn't typically use one of those like eyeshadow sponge things that came with like a lot of sets when you were a little girl. But there are different eyeshadow things you can use. I know there are like single-use brushes even that you can buy, and then it's just practicing. So getting your routine down before you're on a client and adjusting to what your tools are.
Oh, that's a great idea. And one of the things that we get asked about a lot in terms of keeping things clean and or disinfected, I know you do a great job of explaining the difference between clean and disinfected on your video, is the use of alcohol, which is widely used in the makeup industry. A lot of the sprays that they have out there are an alcohol-based, well, it's really not a disinfectant, but why would you, what would make alcohol not an appropriate disinfectant in your world?
So alcohol needs to, or it works best by having the 30% concentration of water. So that'd be 7% alcohol versus something that's too high of an alcohol content, because the water works as a catalyst of the alcohol work. So if it dries too quickly, it's not going to be doing the job effectively at like killing the germs.
Right. And you wouldn't really want to spray alcohol on your cake makeup anyway, right? Wouldn't it ruin the makeup, I'm guessing?
Yeah, it definitely over time deteriorates it, and it just, I think it just would pose a risk if you're kind of doing that quickly while you're working. And then, I mean, alcohol is considered an antiseptic too, so technically could be used on the skin, but you're not going to want to put it on the eyes, you know, or have them it. So if you're working quickly and you spray, you know, your eyeshadow and then you forget about it and it's not dry yet, and then you go put it on the eyes, I think that could be dangerous or harmful.
So how do you recommend setting up those? I realize some makeup comes in pumps and some comes in little squirty tubes and some comes in pressed makeup. How do you set all those things up so that you aren't going back to that original packaging?
So I've changed over a lot of my packaging, and some of the stuff, honestly, I didn't think about until, you know, going through all of this and, you know, learning a lot more about how infection spread. So I've definitely changed my packaging to try to eliminate anything with a lot of texture or small like grooves in it where I can't easily clean. Because my goal now while I'm working is to try to clean and disinfect as much as I can the packaging, like the outside of it, so I can try to avoid cross-contamination. I'm hopeful as we progress, more makeup, especially pro focused makeup lines, will change their packaging into something that is easy for us. Yeah, anything in like a squeeze tube was pretty easy for me to just squeeze it out and not really pose a risk. Things like eyeshadow, instead of me scraping it out while I'm working, I'm just scraping them out ahead of time into jars. So I could either just take out the loose powder or I could reset the powder in the jars. And yeah, just making sure my containers are easy to clean so then I can disinfect the outside.
And you demonstrate all that so beautifully on your video. I mean, one of the things that I find kind of surprising to me when I watched your video is all that goes into making, you know, that kit that you carry with you that looks like it weighs 8,000 pounds, simple to use and still safe. Can you kind of describe for me, because one of the things I struggle with is me telling somebody how to do their job safely when I don't do their job, right? I'm a nurse, and when people would come in and try and train us how to do things that weren't nurses, I'd be like, well, you don't know how I do my job. So just give me like some of your tips or some highlights of how you make that whole thing work. Like, what does it take? Do you have to, you know, be packing that bag up the night before and have it in some certain order? Like, what does it take to actually really do this? And is it really doable? And can you still see the same number of clients and make the same amount of money? Or is there some, you know, change there that makes sense right now?
I think we're definitely going to have to slow our pace down a little bit because, you know, it's not necessarily, maybe it never was safe the way we were always working with having, you know, a bunch of people all crammed into one room, specifically for like backstage somewhere, you know, bridal party, things like that. So that whole process might change where we might have to have just one person back at one time. But as far as like the systems that I've created for my kit is making sure that everything is in those packaging that can be easily cleaned and disinfected. So that's going to be a lot to think about ahead of time, but we have the time right now, you know, we're not working. And then once I'm actually working, I think it's going to be so easy for me to, one, have those habits already because I'm practicing, I know where I'm going to set up, and it's going to make me work much quicker because I just have a system in place. I'm also not going to bring, like I demonstrated the bins that I use, and I'm not going to bring, you know, 12 glitters when I'm going to go do a corporate shoot. Like I don't need to bring all of that with me every single time. I think a lot of people pack that way, and there's always this anxiety of like, what if I don't have what I need? But just learning to work with what you have and having the staples, I think is beneficial no matter what. But especially in this situation where we can start eliminating things. So if there was a situation where we had to get rid of stuff, you know, that's less items that we have. And also I added in, you know, like the green and red bins I talked about, where it's like, I will put my stuff that I'm using into like my green bin. And that stuff I know I already touched, so I can clean and disinfect before my next client. And then my red bin, I'm going to keep closed. That stuff that I know I'm going to have to throw out, like my disposable applicators, any tissues, sponges, things like that.
That's excellent. What do you think about the idea? I get asked this a lot across the board of charging a sort of surcharge right now for your clients on, like a COVID surcharge of a couple dollars because of all the extra disposables that you're using? Or do you feel like, hey, I should have been doing this all along, it should just be a cost of what I do? I mean, how do you feel about that?
I think it really depends on your business model and what area you specifically work in. Like I was thinking about with production companies, I know a lot of that is coming on to the artists. I think I should definitely be in charge of providing it for myself, but because the talent works with everyone, I think maybe the production company should cover their PPE. If you're in bridal, I don't think you should maybe expect them to come with their own things and be prepared, but maybe ask them to have it anyways. And if they do need it, then maybe that is an upcharge for it. As far as disposables and things, that's something we should always have anyways. We can't, reuse a lot of things like I said, the applicators and things like that. Mascara wands, there's not really an alternative to using those things, so that should have been in my kit anyways.
So do you anticipate then when you do use your brushes, I know brushes are expensive and for the most part they're made of natural fibers, and so those natural fibers technically couldn't be disinfected because they're hair, but I mean, what is that process that you see being the most effective with your actual brushes, or do you think you'll switch all to disposable items?
There's no way we can fully eliminate our risk.
Mm-hmm.
And as other people have said, like using disposables is still not exactly the same quality as using brushes. So I think there's no regulation for us, which I guess in this sense is maybe a good thing, but overall, so I think I will continue to use my brushes, but I use them very carefully. Where I individually wrap each set, I only use one brush set per person, and I really deeply clean them every single time. I think that's the most important part, because you can't just you can't spray alcohol on them, but if you just sprayed alcohol on them, that doesn't really do anything. Right. Because you have to fully make sure there's nothing left inside the brush, where that's, if something's sprayed on it, it's not going to reach the inside of the brush anyway. So I think just trying your best to do really thorough cleanings every single time you use it is going to be the most important factor in that.
Right. And to the extent that you can disinfect them or disinfect a surface, obviously, that's something you've demonstrated also in your videos quite effectively. And you did allude to setting expectations with your clients. You said, I can't ask them maybe to bring things with them, where at bridal party, for example, that I could ask a production company to provide, for example. And when you talk about setting expectations, do you anticipate yourself asking any health-related questions or wanting to take someone's temperature, anything like that going forward? Or
I don't. I will definitely follow my guidelines for my state or whatever state I'm working in at the time. I'm not traveling anytime soon, but hopefully one day I'll be traveling. But and that's important too. If you are a traveling makeup artist, make sure you're also following the guidelines of whatever state you go to for it, or whatever it is at the time. But I think, people can be taking medications. There could be other reasons for temperatures to change that I'm not a medical professional, so I don't think I should be the judge of that. And it also puts people, I think, the false sense of security that everything's worry. Personal story, I recently had a hip injection, and this was, a couple of weeks ago at the hospital. They did a COVID test for everyone before you went to the surgical center, and everyone still wore masks, even though, we all know we tested negative before. So I think just taking those precautions anyways, because it's not the only thing that you could be spreading. So if you can just try to contain anything that you're doing, that's important. Now, as far as medical questions, I think a lot of states will require we ask those things. I think it depends if it's your business, as far as not your business, but your business. If you're a bridal business, maybe you're the one in charge of asking those things. But if it's a production company, maybe the production company is in charge of asking that. So I guess figuring out the logistics of that Now, when it comes to asking like other health related questions, I think it gets kind of tricky because you don't want to put yourself at risk for being accused of discrimination for anything. And a lot of that stuff like is not necessarily our business to know those things. So you should just do your, practice everything like everyone has everything that's contagious and try to make it as safe as possible.
I think that's great advice. I think that I'm not a big fan of doing health assessments, so to speak, on clients, because I feel like it puts you at a little bit of a liability also, that if you say to me, what medications are you taking? Then I expect that you know how all of those medications might react with something you're using, when in fact, you probably don't know the whole list of 20 medications somebody's on. So I do think it, does create some liability. So I'm kind of glad to hear that you're taking the approach of, you know what, I'm going to assume everybody has some illness and I'm going to do all the safety precautions I can just to be safe. I don't need to ask you a question because I'm doing this as safely as possible. And I think that's really what everybody should be doing right now in this industry. So do you have anything else you want to say? I answered quite a few questions, and I think that we may get some more questions after your video gets posted and after this is posted. So we may invite you back to answer some of those. But do you have anything else you want to say before we wrap it up?
I think as an industry, we need to be more open to people asking questions. I know me personally, like anyone can ask me anything they want. I won't judge you for not knowing. I think that has been a big problem in our industry for a long time too, where people get backlash for asking certain things. So I just want to be like an open resource for anyone who does have any questions, and hopefully we can start getting better when people do reach out. And I will probably start doing videos or things of, showing how I took my eyeshadows and put them into jars.
Yeah.
Because if you see my video, I didn't do my whole kit intentionally so I could show different things. As I'm going through that, I'll probably start videoing more of it so you can see that a little bit better.
All right. Well, we look forward to seeing that. I look forward to seeing that. I could certainly use some help with all of that. I definitely appreciate the help with answering these questions. Everybody knows it's my least favorite question when I speak. So from now on, I can just refer them to your social media or our website for this video, for your video, or for any of this interview. But I encourage everyone who does makeup, do follow what she demonstrates in her video. It is excellent. It's very well done. And I really appreciate you reaching out to us. It was one of the great emails I opened during all of this. It really got my mind thinking that there are people out there that can answer these questions because you do it every day. I know infection control, but you know how this whole makeup world works. So.
Right.
And someday I'm coming to Chicago and I'm going to make you do a makeover on me. How about that?
I would love that. Absolutely.
Well, thanks for coming and we're not actually coming. Thanks for coming to our Zoom meeting and our interview. And I look forward to talking to you about this at some other point.
Well, thank you so much.
Have a great day.